to an end to that press conference. Does that make sense? Is everybody okay with that? Yeah. Okay. Thanks for coming. As you know, we had the tragic murder of a 9-year-old child yesterday. I'm going to hand you over to Chief Constable Serena Kennedy and Detective Chief Superintendent Mark Comini, who's our Head of Investigations.
Good afternoon. A 9-year-old girl, who we can name today as Olivia Pratt-Korbel, has died following a shooting in Dovecot last night, Monday, the 22nd of August. And her family are absolutely devastated, inconsolable and heartbroken. I know that the murder of Olivia has rocked our communities, who are quite rightly upset and outraged that such an abhorrent crime has occurred here on the streets of Merseyside. The people of Liverpool and Merseyside are known for their compassion and pulling together in times of crisis. And I know that our communities, people are wanting to help the family in any way possible. This is not the time for anyone who knows who is responsible for this shooting to remain tight-lipped. It is time for our communities to come together with us and make Merseyside a place where the use of guns on our streets is totally unacceptable, and those who use them are held to account. Our thoughts and condolences are with Olivia's family, who have been torn apart. No mum, no dad, no sister or brother should ever have to experience loss in this way. Poignantly, Olivia was killed on the 15th anniversary of the murder of Rhys Jones. His murder should have been a watershed moment in the battle against gun crime and the use of guns on our streets. But shockingly, there are still callous criminals who are prepared to use weapons on our streets and have utter disregard for the heartache and the pain that they have caused to Olivia's family. Olivia's family are the third family who've lost a loved one in the past week through gun crime, following the tragic murders of Sam River and Ashley Dale. Our thoughts very much remain with their families, and the investigations continue into their murders. At 10 p.m. last night, our officers were called to Olivia's home on Kingsheath Avenue, and when we arrived, we found 3 people who'd been injured, including Olivia and her mum. It is believed that one of the injured parties, a 35-year-old man, was being chased by a man armed with a gun who was firing at him. The man being chased forced his way into Olivia's house, and the offender ran in after him, firing a number of shots with complete disregard for Olivia and her family, who had no connection with the gunman or the man who forced his way in. Sadly, Olivia was fatally wounded when the gunman fired at the man who was trying to get into the house, and her mum also suffered a gunshot to her wrist. The 35-year-old man had been chased, suffered a number of gunshots to his upper body. Whilst Olivia lay dying, he was picked up by his friends who took him to hospital. On arrival, our officers could see just how poorly Olivia was, and they rushed her to Alderhay Children's Hospital, where despite the best efforts of medical staff, she sadly died, and her mum was taken to hospital by colleagues from the North West Ambulance Service. This is a shocking and appalling attack. which will reverberate around our communities. And I want to take this opportunity again to appeal to anybody who knows who is responsible for this attack to please come forward and give us those names. We need to find all who are responsible for this, not just the gunman. We need to find out who supplied the weapon and who arranged this terrible incident. Forensic experts are at the scene at this moment in time, conducting house-to-house inquiries have taken place, and officers are reviewing CCTV footage to establish and identify who is responsible. We will not rest until those who are responsible are put behind bars. I can guarantee that no stone will be left unturned. I recognise how incredibly frightening this is for our communities, as well as the other murders that we've seen this week at the hands of firearms. People will see a significant increase in the number of police officers on the streets of Merseyside over the next coming days. We are being supported by officers from across the North West, including detectives. As you would expect, we already do a tremendous amount to tackle gun crime with our partners, which has reduced significantly over the past 2 years. But this work with partners will continue, and I am meeting with our partners this afternoon across the region to discuss how we continue this work. Our investigation will rely heavily on information from the members of the public, and I urge the local community who have any information who could help us to come forward so we can bring those who are responsible to justice. I also want to take the opportunity to appeal to members of the criminal fraternity and ask them to examine their consciences, as they will have vital information that can help us. The killing of a 9-year-old child is an absolute tragedy and crosses every single boundary, and I would urge them to do the right thing so we can put this person behind bars. I will now hand you over to Chief Superintendent Mark Kameen.
Thank you, Chief. Good afternoon. Just a little more detail than that which has been provided by the Chief Constable thus far. As the Chief Constable just said, detectives are currently investigating this abhorrent murder of a 9-year-old child, Olivia Pratt-Korbel, in Dovecot last night. My intention now is just to go through a little bit more detail around what we know at this very early stage of the investigation. Following detectives working throughout this last night, we now believe that around 10 p.m, 2 men were walking along Kingsheath Avenue from the direction of Finch Lane. At that time, they were approached by a lone person, potentially a male, who was wearing a black padded jacket, a black balaclava with a peak, dark pants and black gloves. This individual was approximately 5'7" tall and of slim build, and they were carrying a handgun. From what we now know from the review of some CCTV that we have acquired so far, we know that this person shot at the 2 men who were walking down Kingsheath Avenue. Both men responded by running away from that person with the firearm. Responding to the sounds of those gunshots, Olivia's mum, Cheryl, appears to have opened the door to her property in order to see what was going on outside. One of the men, the man that the Chief Constable referred to as the 35-year-old man, appears to have seen the door opening and run towards the opening of that door. He has then forced his way into the property despite the very best efforts of Cheryl, and has made his way inside. As that was taking place, the person with the gun has followed the male to this property. That person has also tried to force entry to the property and has managed, it would appear, to put their hand through the open door as Cheryl continued to try and close it. A shot has been fired, which we believe has hit Cheryl, injuring her and then fatally wounding Olivia. Olivia at that time, we believe, was stood directly behind Cheryl. Despite that horrific circumstances, the attacker has continued the assault and has continued to try and gain entry to the property, and in doing so has then fired 2 further shots at the 35-year-old man who is at this point inside Cheryl and Olivia's home address. The attacker has then left the front door and has made off on foot. As the Chief Constable mentioned a few moments ago, a dark Audi coloured motor vehicle was then seen to arrive at Cheryl's home address and collect the 35-year-old man, who at that point was wounded and at the front of the property. That vehicle, we know, then took the 35-year-old male to hospital. I can confirm that that vehicle has now been seized. Cheryl was also taken to Aintree Hospital and she's being treated for a gunshot wound to her arm. Olivia was taken to Alderhay Hospital and, as the Chief Constable has already explained, and as we know now, sadly succumbed to those injuries despite the very best efforts of medical staff, police officers at the scene and all the staff at Alderhay Children's Hospital. I can reassure you and all the people listening and members of our community that we have an incredibly experienced team of detectives now engaged on this inquiry. They are going to be working tirelessly, and were doing last night throughout the evening, around this investigation, and we are absolutely committed to finding the person responsible and everybody connected with this offence, as the Chief Constable has already pointed out. To do that, I need the public's help. And unfortunately, this is not the first time I've made an appeal this week around a fatal homicide relating to firearms. Firstly, my appeal is to the person responsible for this horrendous attack on a 9-year-old schoolgirl to recognise the pain and anguish that this has caused her family. I want that individual to hand themselves in. I also want the second man that was in the street, that was with the 35-year-old man, to hand himself in to us or make himself known to us. A general appeal now. The local communities, I've said before earlier this week, are our absolute eyes and ears of our intelligence and will help us solve this horrific crime. Therefore, I need them to work with us and provide to us any information at all regarding who is responsible, their current location, the whereabouts of the weapon that was used, or indeed any other information that provides us with a full understanding of what's taken place and allows us to successfully prosecute those responsible for this awful crime. I'm interested, of course, in CCTV, and that could be from private CCTV at people's homes, or if you have it for your doorbells, or dashcam footage. We have launched a major incident portal on our website, and that information can be uploaded directly to us. I'm also interested in any information or speculation that people hear. We know that names will be circulated in the communities very quickly around those that are responsible. I want to hear about those things. I also want to hear, even if you were in the area but you don't think you've heard or seen anything, let us be the judge of that. So if you're in that area or the surrounding community area, please make contact with us. Speak to a detective and we will decide whether you have any vital information or not. I also want to know the whereabouts leading up to this attack of the black Audi motor vehicle that was used to convey the 35-year-old man to hospital. All the information that we do receive, as you can imagine, will be treated with absolute confidence. We'll do everything to protect those people who do come forward with information. If people feel that they can't provide that, then there is the option around Crime Stoppers, and the links are on our website, or the contact number is 0800 555 111. It is absolutely critical, as the Chief Constable has already mentioned, that this individual and everybody surrounding this crime is identified and swiftly brought to justice They have no place in our communities. We have dealt with a number of previous farms-related homicides over this past week, and now we are faced with dealing with a 9-year-old child. Thank you.
Thank you.